the reason I got into jazz is because I wanted to express myself, right? And I think that's why most of us get into it, because we're thinking, okay, improvisation's like, wow, I get to say something that's uniquely me in this moment, right? And so we always have to make sure that that's kind of the step of what we're teaching is like, yes, respect the tradition, learn from the masters, right? But also like, what are these little bits and pieces I take from things that interest me, and how do I integrate them to make me myself?
Yeah.
And I think as long as we're always kind of keeping that in mind as like the goal point, I think that's how we kind of stay engaged with everything and improve.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a big thing, like in my previous career as a martial arts instructor, that because that's something that has that very, very deep tradition. Um, and I really got frustrated with people because, like, people would say, okay, well, this is traditional and this is, whatever. But it's like, we get so caught up with, we're married to the dogma as opposed to the true essence of what something represents. So, martial arts is all about improvisation and creativity, much like jazz. It's adaptability. Things had to change on a generational basis based upon differences in technique, different warfare strategies. Everything has to be able to evolve. But at some point, people just want to freeze and say, okay, well, this is it. This is
Mhm.
it can't change from that. And to me, whatever art form it is, when you reach that point where you say it can't change, then it's dying.
Yep. Totally
If
agree.
it's not evolving, it's not growing. And if it's a dying art form, well, I don't want to waste my time with that. know, I want to be involved in something that's going to continue to grow and to change and become something new. So as a teacher, um, you know, how do you help to instill that in your students? What are the hot buttons that you want to push to shift people? Because I think our educational system, whether it be just general education or the arts, so much of it is stuck into this dogmatic approach. I mean, how do you help people to break that mold and to start thinking a little more creatively?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what you're saying like resonates with me, because for me the most important thing is problem solving, right? And if anything, like that's what I want my students to take away from working with me, is not like, oh, I learned to do this specific thing or this specific thing. Is like, I had a problem musically or even in life, right? I had an issue, and this is how I came up with a strategy to get better. So if you sound bad on the bridge to a tune, like how do you practice it to get better? If your time's bad, how do you get better, right? If your ears are bad, how do you improve that? And so always thinking about that, and that's, I think, where the creativity and practice comes back to. But yeah, I mean, I've been in academia for a while now, and I think one of the things that's these ideas of like adhering to dogma, they don't serve the students, and they don't really serve us as teachers. And so for me, having the ability to look at a problem and not just say that this is the one way to fix it because this is the way I was taught or this is what my teacher told me. It's just see a student struggling with something and go like, well, what if I explained it this way? What if we tried this, right? And for me, bringing it back to trumpet is, my early teachers were mostly like Adams from like the Bill Adams school, right?
Right.
But even then, like seeking out other things just to be like, could this help my students, right? Like, let me learn a little bit about Caruso and Laurie Frank, because maybe that'll help my students. I don't buzz on the mouthpiece, but like maybe I should read the James Thompson book so that maybe there's something there that'll help my students. And so I think any kind of dogma you get into is pretty dangerous and pretty limiting. And I think the other big thing for me with education is helping us to get out of this idea that, education obviously in academia moves really slow. It's slow to make any changes. And as somebody who's worked in it, it's really hard to get people on board with new ideas. But getting away from this idea that students can only be, one of three things. It can either perform, teach, or compose. And we know, as people that have worked in the industry now, like that's not the case, right? Most people have 4 or 5 things that they're doing and they're piecing together a living. But if we don't tell students that, they go into the world and they think like, well, I have to get a job with an orchestra or I'm dead in the water. And so for me is like, first of all, helping students understand that that's not the case. And then going back to some of the stuff we're talking about earlier is being really open, and to saying like, you know what, yeah, I love playing the trumpet and I love playing maybe traditional jazz, but maybe I like hip hop and maybe I can, be a producer. Maybe I can make tracks for people. Maybe I can be an arranger. Maybe I can have a small studio of like 10 to 15 students, and piecing those things together. That's what gives you like a fulfilling career in music. It's
Yeah.
not just doing one thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's a really important concept. And it's been kind of a recurring theme, both in the interviews that I've been doing recently and just in general in my life and the things that are going around me. It's what is it that you're really trying to accomplish? And what is it that's really important to you? That question. Is it being a trumpet player? Okay, well, if that's the most important thing to you, then don't limit yourself to saying that you can only play,
Mm-hmm.
classical gigs. You can only play big band gigs, whatever. Playing the trumpet, if you love playing the trumpet and you want that to be your career, then play everything you can, anytime, anywhere. Just do that and be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't limit your options. If it's to be a musician, well, then that's a different thing, because being a musician can be, like you said, you can be playing your horn, or it can be producing tracks. It can be, engineering, it can be a lot of different things that are part of that process. If it's about creativity, well, then creativity can express itself in so many different ways. You can write a book, you can, so it's like really getting down to answering that fundamental question: what is the most important thing to you? That foundation thing that really gives you juice. And then look for as many ways of expressing that concept as humanly possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I tell my students this all the time, but if your goal when you go to college to study music, let's say, if your goal is to do one single thing, you're really missing the point, right? Your job when you go to school should be to become a great musician and have all these different experiences. If your outlook is to be, the greatest lead trumpet player on the planet, well, like, save your money and go take lessons with Roger Ingram or Wayne, right?
Yeah.
Like that would be a better use of that time. So all those things that students complain about, and I complained about them too, going to theory class, learning class piano, going to ear training, music history, those are all ways to build your musicianship, right? And by building that musicianship, you're looking at it and you're going like, wow, I can be comfortable in a bunch of these situations and I can figure out a way to be successful.